can see from the topic, it's human rights in the supply chain, and there are two categories I'm interested in. This is the moral and the legal responsibilities of corporate actors. My background, as you may see from the title of my chair, is a business administration background, so the management control background, but I've done now business ethics for many, many years, and doing research and teach also in this area. So why did I choose this topic? I was interested because clearly in the German context, we have now an ongoing discussion for such a supply chain law. And this is clearly one of the issues, which is a worldwide phenomenon, of course, because globalization showed us that more or less 80% of world trade is based on global supply chain. So from the economic perspective, we have a huge topic here. And if you just look at Germany, then you can see that round about 320,000 exporters and round about 800 importers. So we have quite a huge also amount of corporations involved in these global supply chains. And then we have maybe one of the incidents. It's a bit like Fukushima for nuclear energy. So this is a triggering event 8 years ago. Rana Plaza accident, one of the worst accidents in the history of the garment industry, with a death toll of over 1,000, mostly women, direct related to a lot of human rights violations. And actually, last week there was a plenary session in the German Parliament about this supply chain law, and a lot of those who spoke about the law directly related to that, even that they had personal experience because they visited. Here we have all the ingredients of the discussion, which then makes this discussion so interesting and very, very complex. So we have companies from mostly from Europe and US who were involved in that. And this kind of involvement was not that they were directly related to the companies in Bangladesh, but these were typically first tier and second tier suppliers. So they had mostly contract relations. So it was not inside the firm. And so the reasoning of a lot of those corporations was that they denied direct responsibility for that. And that clearly poses two main questions. What kind of responsibilities do corporations have in regard to those human rights? And of course, to be more specific, inside the supply chain they are dealing with, and most of them are focal companies. And the second is, which kind of actors are we modeling in this discourse? And I was interested because reading the literature from my side, the business ethics side, and reading the legal discourse about this issue, I saw quite some differences. And I try now to sketch some of the broad differences I see. So this is an ongoing research project. And so I start with responsibility. So if you have a very traditional look on responsibility, then it's a typical thing is, I mean, we need an actor who did something. So we have some violations going on. So we have an event on the other side. We have an evaluator, so some kind of institution or some NGOs. And we have some norms who are related to this responsibility. And these are typically important components we use to attribute responsibilities to actors. And of course, here also corporate actors. And so that's typically the reasoning now those companies choose when denying responsibilities, that they say, well, we were not directly involved in that. So no one of our employees, no manager decided here. So that's the reason why we deny responsibility. And we will later on see that this kind of very traditional responsibility concept mostly related to looking in the past, is now also, you know, we add the notion of looking in the future as well. So important is clearly that in the discussion we are talking usually about multinational corporations as moral actor or legal actor, because those are the ones who are involved here. So without any you know, precise definition, those are the ones who usually have cross-border business. And the other thing which is of importance is that, especially from the human rights literature with a legal background, it's usually the state who has to or who has human rights duties. And we have usually these three components: respect, so not directly harm; protect, so you know, create institutions or fulfill, for instance, if we have positive human rights, so you know, healthcare, education, etc., etc. And in the traditional way of seeing this discourse, companies usually are not involved. So usually it's the state who has all these kind of duties. So if we look then in the business ethic literature, the discourse is different. So I mean, we see typically, we have heard about this in the introduction here. So I will not elaborate on the way as corporations are seen as moral actors. So this, those who are involved in this discourse know that French has made a seminal contribution. So based with this, you know, decision structure internally, you know, getting some kind of collective intentionality. So this is, you know, the way corporations act. So I will not go on that. So the more interesting is that most of the scholars who argue for corporations also taking responsibilities in respect to human rights argue with the corporation as powerful actor. And I guess my co-presenter will say something about this, because here we also find the corporation as a political actor. I think this is also a huge topic there. So what we often can find in the literature then is that there is a kind of meaning that these multinational corporations are very centralized units, you know, looking from a very centralized, and this is one single unit. And this also means then that if this is true and we are a powerful corporation, so our responsibility boundaries go way beyond contracts or, you know, equity shares like in a group holding. So they reflect this also in regard to supply chains. So the responsibility boundaries, you know, widen. And if you see this in the legal literature, then you see that although they create a legal personality, so it's a first step of creating also corporations as an actor inside international law and human rights law. Often this is restricted to this first of the three categories: duty to respect. And one of the things you will often find is that in the legal discourse, there is a truly, you know, restriction on the legal entities issue. So there is this kind of typical look at groups that the parent and subsidiaries are separated. So there's separate legal entities. So the boundaries are not based on your kind of power relationship and widened in the scope, but it's more confined to the directly legal restrictions there. And you can find this nicely in both of these two categories. And I will look at the first one because it's one thing you find in the business ethics literature. So we see on the one side the protect Here again, it's usually in the legal discourse that the state has the main provenance with that. And so it's, based on their jurisdiction, on their sovereign power. They have to install laws and other institutions to really protect their citizens from that. And clearly that's the issue when we look at Rana Plaza, that we have the feeling that in the Bangladesh context, this isn't really done by the state. So that may be the reason why in business ethics literature, then often it's also subscribed to corporations. So based on this kind of economic power and the capabilities going along with that, it's not that they should overtake the duties of the state, but that they support the state. So it's quite like an auxiliary function. So it's kind of shared political responsibility. So they should recommend to protect, they should advocate human rights. So it's something which is accomplished in a way based on the notion of this powerful corporation. And so we see that in some of the discourse, we have a mix of both sides. But if we look at the what actually will happen, and so this is my last part here of my talk. What actually happened in regulating, then we will clearly see that I think also the triggering event where the issuing of the UN guiding principles on business and human rights in 2011, that is restricted to the corporate responsibility to respect. And this is also then operationalized in a very specific way. So typically here I combined already what usually is proposed, and then we see that in the new drafts here for the German law, but also for the European law, which is in the moment in the state that the European Parliament is discussing about it, and we will, I think, later see in the last quarter of this year that the Commission is always also taking initiatives. And this is typically what we see. So it's a duty of care which is behind that. And everybody with a business background knows things like compliance system, due diligence system, risk assessment. And that's usually those mechanisms which are proposed for this task of responsibility to respect. So we find this, you have to have a policy statement about the human rights and risk analysis. You should train the management and your employees. You have to report, you have to make audits. So this is a typical list of what you will find in these different regulations we already have. And so closing, what I was trying to show a bit is that the moral discourse usually starts with a broad scope of responsibilities. Usually, if you look at the literature, they often don't restrict the human rights. They use all of them. And it's a complete supply chain they are looking at. So there's no legal boundaries. And as I shown you in one example, also there's a huge discussion that's not only to respect, but all the others categories should be included, and it should be about all corporations. And then if you go step by step to what's actually seen in the law, then you will see that it's confined. Already, if you take the UN guidelines as one, soft law, I think one of the most important ones, because all the others which came later on usually refer to it, then you can already see that you have some confinements. And especially the most important one is that they restrict it to respect. So here the bold one, but still there's no restriction on the other side. But then if you see what actually happened during the years, and we have, this is of course a very broad sketch here, because we have different legislations. For instance, in California, in France, in the UK, in Netherlands, in Australia. But what you can often see is that you have less scope. Still, we have the complete supply chain that we still restricted to the respect issue, and that we don't look at all corporations, but usually size, industry are two things which are restricted. And again, if you see now the drafts in Germany and the European Union, as far as I can sketch them, they are also very, very broad. Again, we see that this respect still is the main issue. So it's the duty of care which is behind that. And still, which is very, very interesting, there's no restriction of legal entities, but it's still the idea of we have to look at the complete supply chain. And the same as not all corporations, usually is size one of the most important things where we make some restrictions. And of course, here it's more clearly based on a lot of declarations, for instance, the ILO or the UN declarations, where this still incorporates not all human rights, but I think all the important ones. Well, yes, thank you very much for your attention.